Tonight, more companies are gearing up to bring people back to the office, but only if they're vaccinated.
At a very minimum, those policies should include, proof of vaccination.
The city's top doctor is calling on employers to have vaccine policies in place, and many major organizations are doing just that. We'll tell you which ones. Plus,
we are disappointed that Elections Canada has said that they are not going to mandate vaccines for their workers.
with long-term care homes commonly used as polling stations during an election, staff are worried about how residents will be kept safe come September's vote. And
that is a big win for this community that has fought very hard for that result.
after a months-long battle and outcry from community activists, the City of Toronto reaches a deal with the province to preserve some heritage features of the historic Foundry site. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, more businesses are telling their employees that they must get a vaccine in order to come back to work. All but one of Canada's big banks say they will be requiring staff to be vaccinated against COVID-19, while Toronto's top doctor today called on all workplaces in the city to have vaccine policies in place. Our Dale McNuckduck starts us off tonight.
The financial district is desolate, but companies are gearing up to bring people back safely with mandatory vaccine policies.
The corporations should not have a say in what personal choice people should be making.
I don't think it should be mandated.
You know, it's not that unusual. We expect children to be vaccinated for different diseases in school.
Public Health says the more protections in the workplace, the better, such as proper ventilation, personal hygiene, and signage.
Vaccine policies are the kinds of things that we can put into place or that employers can put into place as part of their obligation to create as safe a work environment as is possible.
Meanwhile, earlier today, Metrolinx informed staff they'll need to be vaccinated. The transit company plans to bring office staff back towards the end of September. A recent internal survey of nearly half of its employees found over 80% have initiated vaccination or are fully inoculated.
Reaction from staff immediately has been extremely positive. The most are saying, thank you for doing this. This is the right thing to do. I feel safer now coming back into the office.
Riders feel the same way.
It's a wonderful thing, especially with the number of people they come into contact with on a regular basis.
I feel like that's what you got to do to beat this virus, so it just makes sense.
But what about the people who don't want to get vaccinated? Employment lawyer Daniel Lublin expected the private sector to roll out vaccine policies, and it's well within their right to do so.
The interesting part is whether or not that companies can fire individuals. We say they can fire them, but they would have to pay severance.
Lublin says employees don't have the right to continued employment if they fail to comply with company policies unless they have a medical or religious exemption. Lublin also says that companies will have to provide proper notice to allow individuals the time to get vaccinated if they haven't already. Most of these big banks have issued an October 31st or November 1st date for when their new policies will take effect. He also points out that many of the announcements don't include information on what would happen to employees who refuse to comply with these new policies. Dale McNuckduck, CBC News, Toronto.
The University Health Network says any employee who doesn't get the shot by October will be terminated. UHN has a strict deadline of October 8th for the workers. Now, if they aren't vaccinated by then, they will be placed on unpaid leave for 2 weeks. And if they still don't have the shot at the end of that time period, they will be fired. The network is asking all employees to have at least their first shot by September 8th. And COVID numbers in this province saw a rise today. The province logged 650 new cases. Now that's the highest number of infections on a single day since June. 2 deaths were reported as well. ICU figures show that critical care visits increased for almost a week straight. The 7-day average now sits at 518 cases, the highest number since June 13th. Well, long-term care staff and advocates are raising concerns about safety in the homes during the federal election. Elections Canada has said it won't require all election staff or campaign workers visiting long-term care homes to be fully vaccinated. And as our Lorenda Redicott reports, those homes are commonly used as polling stations.
You'll likely see these signs outside long-term care homes on election day.
We don't know those people coming from outside I don't know if they're fully vaccinated, right?
Tess Samuels is a personal support worker and already worries about visitors in the home where she works. Now, there could be political party staff and volunteers during the campaign, though no doubt much different than during pre-pandemic days. Plus, staff at the polls on Election Day.
We are disappointed that Elections Canada has said that they are not going to mandate vaccines for their workers.
The Ontario Long-Term Care Association has raised concerns.
Can we have outdoor polling stations? Are there ways to restrict some of the canvassing activities that those two are outside?
Elections Canada confirms it won't require vaccinations, but in a statement says given vaccination rates, they believe most employees will have had their 2 doses. Plus, a spokesperson says returning officers will prioritize fully vaccinated people while dealing with vulnerable voters. In addition, it says mail-in and special ballots are an option and says health and safety is a top priority. This advocate says what she doesn't want is residents left out of this election.
We want to make sure that people are able to vote, are able to speak to their candidates, but that everybody's, kept as safe as possible.
Parties have mentioned long-term care in their promises. Samuels hopes after this tough year and a half, with close to 4,000 deaths due to COVID, that remains an election issue.
Every day we're short of staff because nobody wants to go in the long-term care because
she says her co-workers are worried.
Why don't I just work in McDonald's? Like at least in McDonald's, I can just the drive-through, they just give it. But us, frontline workers, we have some COVID patients.
She wants whoever wins the election to remember them. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
And ahead of the September election, mayors from across the GTA are sending their list of priorities to the federal parties, from transit funding to more support for affordable housing. But as Dan Takema tells us, some are questioning why certain issues didn't make the list.
We want to be sure they're all informed and well informed about our priorities.
GTA mayors are mailing out their wish lists for this federal election. At the top of that list for John Tory are 5 points. More COVID-19 relief with another $702 to $1.5 billion in 2022, support for Toronto's housing and homeless recovery plan, continued investment in transit, including the Eglinton and Waterfront East LRT projects, help building a stronger mental health care system, and following through on the commitment of $26 million for community violence prevention programs. Tory says at the core of his request is a need for long-term stability.
My major focus will be on the sustainability of whatever it is they say they're going to do.
Nearby mayors have similar priorities. Bonnie Crombie is also pushing for public transit and green infrastructure. Support for business and affordable housing also make her list.
A new deal for cities that allows us to stand on our own 2 feet, be able to control our own destiny, be able to pay our own way.
Hamilton's mayor has raised affordable housing and help tackling poverty too, among other priorities.
Dealing with the impacts of climate change and greenhouse gas reduction emissions, strong economic recovery that's going to be necessary for the next few years, and equity, diversity, and inclusion as part of the impacts on hate-related incidents that we're seeing in our community.
Each of the 3 major parties have all made pledges to address climate change and to support business and economic recovery. The Liberals have yet to release a full platform, while the NDP and Conservatives have both committed to build public transit. That said, the Tories' plan specifically states we can't just have a recovery for downtown Toronto. One Toronto City Councillor is calling out what didn't make John Tory's list, and he's not alone. Former Councillor Janet Davis has the same concern.
But what stood out to me and what was very disappointing was that there was no mention of childcare.
Davis says Toronto and its mayor have influence, and affordable childcare would play a major role in Canada's recovery. Dan Takema, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, meteorologist Nick Cernovich joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Nick, hot and muggy outside, and this heat is going to be sticking around.
Yeah, Calda, it really is sort of oppressive heat. We've got temperatures that are at the 30 mark. We've got humidex values that are in the high 30s. We have a heat warning in effect for the City of Toronto as well. That was issued by Environment Canada. And this is a look at some of the afternoon temperatures that we saw. Basically 30s across the board. Actually, the hottest place in Ontario was Ottawa. tipping that at about 32 degrees or so. Now, this is what we can expect in terms of the forecast heading through the next 24. Not much to speak of in terms of precipitation for Toronto, but north of the GTA, we'll see some spotty showers through the afternoon. They kind of dissipate, and Sunday, much of the same. So the forecast through the next 24, 21 degrees tonight, humidex of 28 at its lowest, and then tomorrow, high of 30 degrees, humidex of 37, about a 30% chance of seeing a brief spotty shower, but for the most part, it should stay dry for the city of Toronto. Your full forecast in just a bit.
Thanks, Nick. The City of Toronto and the province have come to an agreement about the historic Dominion Foundry complex. It's been the center of a contentious battle since January, when the Ford government began demolition on one of the buildings with a ministerial zoning order. Our Jessica Ng has more on how the community helped save part of the site.
The province has agreed in principle to preserve some of the foundry buildings in the Canary District. The provincially owned Dominion Foundry complex consists of 4 buildings constructed between 1912 and 1953. They were given City Heritage designation in 2004. After cultural and heritage evaluations, 2 of the 4 features, the cleaning room and the machine shops, are to be saved and partly rebuilt. The site was a major hub for the construction of railway equipment in the 20th century.
There are heritage elements that must be preserved on the site, and that is a big win for this community that has fought very hard for that result.
In January, onlookers watched as demolition started on the site under a secretive ministerial zoning order, or MZO. The St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association filed a court injunction to stop it.
The city, because of its need for approvals, was unable to act quickly enough in order to participate. And so we sort of took the bull by the horns and went forward with the court proceeding.
That was followed by consultations between the province, the city, and community groups. Even today, the buildings are still covered with memories of how the activists came together to save them. But that shouldn't have had to happen, according to Toronto Centre MPP Suze Morrison.
A community should never be put in the position of having to take their own government to court to protect their heritage assets, and that's exactly what happened.
Under the new agreement, and based on architectural recommendations, affordable housing in the historic area will be built. Mayor John Tory tweeted, "This path forward has ensured the outcome that I always had hoped could be achieved here. It will also include community spaces."
They're very majestic buildings. We want to make it into a musician's center. We have no place for musicians to come together.
We're going to have to keep watching the site and watching the progress develop to ensure that the community's vision is actually reflected as the province moves forward with selecting a developer.
Still, for Friends of the Foundry,
it's very exciting to have got to this point after a long fight.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
What we see today.
Toronto police are investigating after a man was found dead in the middle of a road in Scarborough tonight. Police believe the man was struck by a vehicle. It happened at Nielsen Road and Oak Meadow Boulevard. He was found just before 8:30 and pronounced dead at the scene. Roads are expected to be closed in this area for a few hours. And to Hamilton now, where a man says he is still shaken after dozens of police officers knocked down his girlfriend's door looking for weapons. Last month, the 53-year-old with no criminal record found himself lying face down on the floor with his hands zip-tied behind his back. Critics say no-knock search warrants need more oversight. Artalia Ricci reports.
And then I heard a huge bang. The house shook. And then the fire alarm went off.
There's still visible damage in Masood Mirza's girlfriend's townhome from the night of July 27th.
After the door, they must have let off one of those grenades here.
Mirza says he was startled awake by a loud noise, then suddenly surrounded by dozens of heavily armed officers.
And they came in and they had guns pointed at me and said, on the ground, on the ground, on the ground, like that. So I laid down. I'm like, listen, you guys got the wrong place. So one of the tactical team guys, he hog-tied me.
Mirza says one of the officers threw a search warrant on the table. The person named on the warrant was his girlfriend's friend who was visiting, not living there. That woman has a criminal record including drug and theft convictions.
The tactical team literally spent 2-3 minutes, went through the house, rummaged the whole thing, went to the basement, tossed everything, no guns. That's what they came for, guns.
In a statement, Hamilton police say in this case, the investigation led police to believe the house contained a number of firearms, adding police must provide evidence that substantiates the need to search a residence. In most cases, police cannot arbitrarily conduct a search warrant without prior authorization. Police said no arrests were made and nothing was seized from the home, but the investigation is ongoing.
Increasingly, search warrants are authorized on the basis of informant. And those informants and any information that the informant gives also remain secret.
This lawyer says no-knock police raids and use of confidential informants need more oversight.
There should just be a use of force report. Why was there a dynamic entry? Why was it deemed necessary? And fill that out. So that should be the first thing. And that can come either legislatively or that can come through police service board direction to police forces.
Honestly.
Mirza says the incident was traumatizing and shocking. He's also recovering from heart surgery. His neighbors witnessed the commotion that evening too.
This big truck was there, everybody's running around, all this chaos, we didn't know what was going on. It was super scary.
To be honest, it was a very loud noise. At first, some neighbors thought it was a gunshot at first.
Mirza wants an apology, but most of all, he wants police to tell him why they raided the home in the first place.
I'm just trying to figure this whole thing out. And I really don't have any answers. I really don't 100% know what happened that night.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Hamilton.
Partly cloudy overnight. Currently it's 25 degrees downtown, but feeling more like 31 with that humidex. All right, let's go back to Nick now with a look at your extended forecast. And Nick, for those who like it hot, it's kind of the weekend for them, but do have to take care out there with the heat warning likely sticking around.
Yeah, you definitely do. And if you can get to a splash pad or a pool or somewhere cool. Temperatures in the 30s, humidex values in the high 30s, and we've got a heat warning in effect for the city of Toronto. There's a look at our weather headlines, and everything has to do with the heat. I want to draw your attention to the last one there, by the way. No relief in sight. It looks like this is going to stick around for the next few. The weather pattern not changing much. We're sort of in the stagnant weather pattern, and so what we're expecting to see is basically the same story repeating day after day after day. Starts out as mainly sunny skies to a mix of sun and cloud. In the afternoon, we'll see a little bit more in the way of cloud cover, likely triggering some spotty showers along the lake breeze, sort of a convergence area over here. Should generally stay out of the city of Toronto. However, still about a 30% chance of seeing it for some of you. And then into Sunday morning, same story. It starts out sunny to a mix of sun and cloud. Afternoon scattered showers, mostly down towards southwestern Ontario, though. So by and large, a dry, hot, sunny weekend, muggy as well, but the slight chance of seeing a few spotty showers. Southwestern Ontario tonight, 19 degrees. Some fog patches developing. Those will dissipate into tomorrow, and then through the afternoon, again, 30% chance of seeing isolated showers, temperatures in the 30s, humidex values approaching that 40 mark, and basically the same for the Golden Horseshoe. Looking at overnight lows of about 20, 21 degrees, humidex values in the high 20s, that's for the overnight. And then tomorrow, the actual temperature itself is pegged at about 30 degrees there, humidex value of about 37, and again, some isolated showers, particularly north and west of the GTA. So there is a look at your long-range forecast, and essentially it's the same weather all the way out toward Tuesday, even Wednesday. Wednesday or after Wednesday, we may start to see a little bit of relief, but at least for the next 4 or 5 days, look for that hot, muggy weather to stick around. Kelda.
Weather is brought to you by Train. To cool and clean the air in your home, it's hard to stop a train. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
The TTC is shutting down Line 3 tomorrow for track work. That's the light rail line in Scarborough. There won't be any service between Kennedy and McCowan on Saturday. And on Sunday, the Yonge line between Sheppard and Bloor will be out of service. Shuttle buses will be running in replacement of the subways. And expect delays if passing through Pearson Airport this weekend. The Greater Toronto Airport Authority says it's expecting a higher number of passengers than normal. They say it's a trend that's expected to continue due to loosening COVID-19 restrictions. Passengers can expect to wait longer to go through customs due to health screening measures. The Toronto Raptors say they're coming home. The team tips off the new NBA season on October 20th when they host the Washington Wizards. Now, according to the game schedule, it will be played at Scotiabank Arena. However, they have not yet received approval from all three levels of government to play in Canada. The Raptors were the only NBA team forced to relocate last season and play in Tampa, Florida due to COVID-19 restrictions at the Canada-US border. The team has not played a game at home since February 2020. Well, 5 Toronto frontline heroes will be throwing the first pitch at Blue Jays games at the Rogers Centre over the next few days. We spoke to Toronto Public Health's Omar Ozaldin, who detected the first case of COVID-19 in Toronto. He is set to throw the first pitch next Wednesday in the Jays' third game against the White Sox.
It's very nice gesture to acknowledge the frontline staff and what they were able to accomplish. I will be walking on the field and thinking of everyone in this city and how generous and tremendously generous they were. This is just an example of that. It's just a manifestation of how we are, and mainly the city of Toronto. It's a manifestation of how the city have responded, how everybody raised to the occasion and tried to help each other.
Velma Walker, a personal support worker, was the first one up at tonight's Jays game against the Detroit Tigers. Last month, the Jays announced that they would be dedicating the month of August to honor frontline workers across the GTA. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.